Hello, welcome to Taxpayer Alert. I'm Al Segala. I'm president of the Calaveras County Taxpayer Association and also your host on this show. And, you know, our guests are always interesting people, and this is no exception. We have Gary Tofanelli, Supervisor, and we'll be discussing what's happening in the county. Gary, welcome.
Thank you, Al. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Now, what are your feelings about what's going on now? You're apparently you enjoy being a supervisor because I see you smile quite often.
Is that an indication? It could be something else. It's fine. This is I'm heading into the third year on the board on this term, right. And the board's rolled over, but I feel pretty comfortable. You try and work with everybody that's on the board that the voters have voted in to represent who they want them to represent them in their districts, and so you just start learning each other and go forward and get some bonding and some relationships with them, and trying to understand their philosophy on things and where they're going. But there's nothing here or on this board. That's preventing me from any bonding or relationships. I think they're all great people. They're all smart people.
All right.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
The last board meeting was a study session on cannabis, and it was kind of an exciting meeting. That we had a lot of emotions displayed there, and. I think that the board was thinking of, or maybe planned to do some sort of regulatory approach on that rather than a ban. And the question could be, since there's pretty stringent state regulations right now, would our regulations be on top of that, or in addition to that, or how would that work?
Well, it's up to the board on what they elect to do. Right. But I think the main issues here are land issues, right. Land use issues that have to do with this. The state's regulations on how to handle it and so forth like that will probably be part of the discussion.
Right.
And I don't know how far it'll go into it. I didn't get into a whole lot of that on the last board meeting, but I think the main issues facing us going forward is the land use issues with it, and where it's allowed to be grown, what zones, what size lots they'll be allowed in, whether there's going to be an ability for the growers to co-op or multiple grows on a large acreage lot. Right. What zones are they going to be allowed in? Right. What minimum size again? Those type of issues I think are important, along with some other issues that have to do with whether they have to have a house or a dwelling or some type, or a building of some type on the property.
With a bathroom?
With a bathroom, where they're getting their water source from, those type of issues like that, right. Will be in our conversations that more or less aren't in with the laws of the state. Right. So those will be the main topics I think going forward. Whether we craft something that's going to be real tough regulations, whether to craft something to ban, say a ban in, which obviously if the intent, the major intent of the board, or at least 3 supervisors of the board, was intent to keep it banned, then we wouldn't even have a study session on it.
Right.
It would have stayed in place. So I think the majority of the board is looking to do some type of regulations.
Right.
And this study session, again, was there was some direction given to staff, but it was going to be brought over into the first part of April, I believe. So it wasn't actually completed. It was extended after staff had come back and to come up with some answers to some of the questions that were asked. And again, the length of time was because of you have the general plan coming up, you've got midterm budget coming up, and you got some other items coming up that is as you know, the general plan has been the #1 focus, just even on this board coming forward in January. When we took, in the second meeting of January, we took an opinion poll on the board and study sessions. The general plan was the #1 item coming forward. So.
And on the general plan, I think we have some an ideological input from the coalition for planning coalition.
Planning coalition.
Yeah, and I read the comments that they read to the board of supervisors, and it seems like they seem to favor more control over what's happening on private land, and they feel that by having a more restrictive approach, then it would help economic development because a buyer will know exactly what he can and can't do on a parcel. I don't know if that theory would work really well, but that seems to be what's proposed. The existing and past philosophy, I think, was more keeping the general plan general and try to keep it flexible to allow the property owner the protection for his property rights so he could choose what he wants to do with his land. And of course, he can't do anything that would hurt the neighbors or the public. And so the general plan in that framework would be more interested in public safety rather than control of what would occur on property.
Well, the general plan in itself is a guiding principle.
Right.
When you start getting into the things that you're talking about, will be after the general plan is adopted.
And zoning.
And then we get into Title 17 and zoning and what you are allowed to do, or a conditional use permit that you can, with restrictions on what you do, which is a conditional use permit. Those issues are be coming up and be discussed then specifically. Now, there is some in the general plan on the zoning, and the good thing about the general plan going forward is we have a lot of zones that are, they call U zones, in which they have no designation. They're undesignated zones.
Unclassified.
Unclassified. Yeah.
Unclassified, okay.
Yes, and this if you look at the new general plan map, proposed map, it gets away and actually gives those zoning, because the undesignated zones or unclassified zones is kind of a loophole as to what you can and can't do on things, because it's not in Title 17.
Yeah.
It's either RR, RA, agriculture, M1, M2, industrial, whatever. So I think that's a good thing. It'll give direction to people and looking for economics developments that you spoke of. At least an idea of total county on what they can and can't do.
Yeah.
You bring up the planning coalition. Yes, one member got up and pounded the podium and said, "Make my day. If you don't do our changes, that we're going to sue you." And I kind of looked at it and thought, geez, it sounds like you are saying either let us write the general plan or we're going to sue you.
Yeah.
But they had 24 topics or items that they had on their list, and some of them, yes, some of them
Yeah.
You know, it's like anything else. You look at them and you read them and you think about it. I don't know where the board's going to go on it.
Right.
There's a lot of other people when it comes before the board, or even the planning commission, that will pack the house and have their comments and want to have their comments on it.
Yeah.
And how they feel about either the zone they live in or the designation of the zone that the new plan shows them, or how they feel about development and where it should go. And so you have to weigh in all of that. And I try and keep an open mind when it comes to me, and even the last time when I was on the board before and it came before us, an open mind and all of that. But at the same time, you have to think about, as you brought up, neighbors and other people in the county as a whole.
Yeah, or public safety. Yeah.
Public safety also, yes.
Yeah.
So
our group, the Taxpayer Association, has set up a committee to review each of those items of concern of the coalition and come up with our suggestion, maybe support or oppose, and try to give our reasons why. And then if we have good communication with them, perhaps when the dust is settled, we may have something that would be worthwhile, or not, we don't know. So we're also looking at the possibility of a charter county. We're general law county now.
we're general law county. That's
And
correct.
so there's a lot of study that we need to do on that, and it may be a long time before we can have something that would be worthwhile to put forward, or not.
Or not.
Yeah. So on the general plan, we have a general plan now,
We do.
and it's not like there is no general plan.
That's correct.
And then the unclassified designation, actually it's working. There's
It's working, although it enters into, sometimes it comes up as a problem and some issues when people are trying to do something on their property, and it's not a clear-cut designation on what they can and can't do.
oh yeah, like commercial.
Yes, commercial. And you know, there was one of the items that was discussed at this cannabis study session that they were talking about, and I wasn't there for the full meeting. I had some emergency thing going on with a family member. They were talking about 20-acre parcels, and if they're designated RR,
Right. Rural residential.
rural residential. But most of those lots are within a subdivision.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's a subdivision that has a map, and that map has been registered with the state of California.
Yeah.
And it's on file here. And if you start allowing people in subdivisions to change from residential or rural residential into something else, you're opening a can of worms on what you're going to allow in that zone, in that area. And you talk about neighbors and what you disturbing neighbors and public safety.
I'm thinking of
It's
vineyards.
really not.
I'm thinking of vineyards.
Yeah, well, yeah, but it's still, if you're going to allow something and give them the right to do something commercial or whatever, you got somebody that may say, okay, fine, I want to put a spray booth on my property. You've allowed this. It just kind of, you got to watch out changing the designation from a subdivision that's supposed to be rural residential and allowing different things into it and what you can and can't do. It could open a can of worms.
I think in the Bar 20, which is a 20-acre subdivision, that issue came up in the past.
It's came up many times, yes.
Yeah, and I think the thinking was that, well, you can have agricultural on rural residential, but you can't have it 100%. I think it's like
Correct.
5 acres or something like that.
The primary use of it has to be a residence.
Right.
That's the primary use.
And then,
It's
so-
designated in Title 17.
So chickens and grapes would be
Yeah,
accessories.
it's trying to keep it from being a commercial business type situation.
Right.
It's a residential area. It's for residences, and I think a lot of that language will be cleared up when we go into Title 17 after the general plan is adopted. So, and I think it was adequate at the time when Title 17 many years ago, 26 years ago, I think it was.
I was too young then.
I was, but anyway, it may have been adequate, but as we move forward, like anything else, I'm not driving a 30-year-old car right now, and
Yeah, true.
So,
Yeah, I think taxpayers are kind of rooting for trying to keep protection of property rights as much as possible, and also public safety. And beyond that, we're kind of whatever people want to do, as long as they don't hurt their neighbors. We have a hard time telling them they can't. So I think the process on the zoning, it goes to the planning commission first. Is that correct?
Well, yes, it'll go to the planning commission, just like the general plan. After, I think it's just about done as far as the public comment period and answering the public comments.
Right.
The package will be going, that general plan itself will go to, the final document will go to the planning commission for their comments and what have you, and then it'll come to the board. Same way with Title 17. There'll be discussion with the planning commission first.
Okay.
And their suggestions to the board on what they feel is appropriate for each use in each zone.
Okay.
And the conditional uses for those zones.
When is the cutoff date for public comments on the general plan? Do you know?
That's already gone as far
gone?
as the general plan EIR, those comments. You have the right to comment publicly when it's at the public commission, or excuse me, planning commission, and when it's at the board.
Okay.
But as far as writing comments and submitting them, that time's gone.
That would be incorporated.
Yeah.
All right. Another item that concern is fire prevention and suppression, and that's a big item for our little county.
It is a big item, and fire breaks are a big thing now, and talking to fire breaks in areas, protecting heavily populated areas. And also, I had a number of calls, because people are very fire aware now, of an ordinance, putting an ordinance together that is defensible by both the fire departments and the county to enforce people to clear their lots if they're within residential areas close to homes and so forth, in order to keep them fire safe. As you know, and everybody's aware of, over the course of the last 3 to 5 years, the enormous amount of fires and how it's changed over the course of those years, and firestorms erupting, and just things in things that you've seen that you have never seen before.
Right.
Over the years that we've lived here in California, or even in other states. It's just a different monster now, and so as we get going and we evolve into what it's going to look like in the future, I think that's what we're going through right now. But I'm in big favor of an ordinance, especially in close-knit areas that have small lots that are bordering large landscape areas or rural areas behind them, and that those lots are maintained. And we need some teeth to be able to tell the people, you need to clean them, or we're going to have to come in and clean it for you.
Don't we have a law now that so many feet from a dwelling needs to be cleared?
That's CAL FIRE.
Yeah.
That's CAL FIRE. Whether they enforce it, I don't see them coming. When the fire tax, the $150 fire tax came out, it was a big thing. They would come out and look. But since then, I don't see them coming out and looking at lots or writing violations to that or anything like that. When it comes to the county areas, when you have subdivision like in Valley Springs, there's a lot of empty lots in Valley Springs that butt up to rural areas, the hills going up there, and out and around Costco Creek and so forth, that the lots aren't being maintained by the owners that may live in Maine. I don't know where they live, but they own the lot here, and it's unimproved, and it's allowed to grow up weeds high and just not kept to where it's fire safe, where it could affect the neighbors on either side of them. And that's part of this fire study session. I think the fire chiefs are looking to form a JPA together to get together and have some enforcement, not only on fire suppression, prevention, but Also, when commercial buildings are built, and being able to review the plans on those and make sure they're fire safe and they have some safe fire access. There was an issue here recently on a building here in Valley Springs that was a wood building. And they were wanting to tuck the fire access ladder way back in the back in a little room to get onto the roof.
Yeah.
And being a wood structure, it would be okay if it was primarily a metal structure like you see when you go into a Costco or a Walmart and it's all metal.
Yeah.
It would be virtually okay for that. But when this is all wood frame and it's a 2-story and it's going up, you need an outdoor access on the back ladder to get up there on the roof. And
makes sense.
Yeah. So.
But your main point, I think, was the fire department should review the plans for fire safety.
If they have somebody capable of reviewing those plans.
Okay.
And Calco had somebody, they left, and now they're back, but not every one of these volunteer fire departments have that. So I think this is part of the JPA, that they would designate somebody to do that, or 1 or 2 or 3 people that have the ability to review plans and see what's going on and understand it and make their suggestions. This is one that simply was overlooked until it got to the point where they realized that this ladder was not going to do any good.
Yeah.
You know.
It was a good catch.
Yeah, it was a very good catch.
Yeah.
So those type of issues, not only the forest fire type things, situations that we're talking about, but fire safety as far as commercial buildings. They certainly don't want people trapped in something without proper access to get out and free, especially in wood frames.
I understand that we follow the Uniform Building Code, which has been adopted by the state,
Mm-hmm.
and then the fire code and electrical code.
Mm-hmm.
And a good deal of the building code has to do with fire safety.
It does.
And I'm wondering if we need another layer or not. If there's something that needs to be added to the Uniform Building Code, like checking on ladders and commercial or whatever, you know.
Well, I think a lot of, and I'm in the building trade.
We have a plan checker.
We do have a plan checker, and I'm in the building trade. It's been in my entire life. That's all I've ever done is buildings. And UBC codes are very, very good in the fact that what you can and can't do, firewalls, which go extend all the way up to the roof, 1 hour burns, 2 hour burns in designated areas, parapet walls, the whole thing. They're very, very adequate. And then on top of that, in many areas, again, like the JPA with the fire chiefs trying to put together, city fire chiefs review. They have people that specifically do plan reviews, looking for that type of things. They have the ability to come to the city and ask them to put in a new code, add a code and an ordinance when they see something going on outside otherwhere. So you can have the UBC code, but you can also have city or county codes that are better. Yes, that's correct.
So in that case, we wouldn't be looking for our friends in the fire department to review every plan. We'd be looking to them to review the Uniform Building Code and then see if it's adequate, and where it's not, in their opinion, then that could be added as an ordinance. And if it was, then our regular plan checker could catch that along with everything else.
It can. But going back in the whole building thing, it really starts with when there's ordinance and codes. The architects that draw up the plans are supposed to be aware of not only the UBC codes and draw their building accordingly. Right. So a plan checker can go through and he's not looking for every specific thing. He's looking for, it's conforming. Right. And then the architect needs to check on the codes and the ordinances in the county or city that they're checking for to make sure that this plan is up to date with all of that in there. But like anything else, like this wood frame building, some things sometimes slip through the cracks for whatever reason.
Right.
Not that somebody's not doing their job or anything like that, but some things do. I think another set of eyes through a fire department, through a JPA, and a fire marshal going specifically, not looking whether the wall is a 6-inch wall when it needs to be a 4-inch, or a 4-inch wall it needs to be 6-inch, or it's 1 hour. Or above. He's specifically looking for fire-related issues. And it's another set of eyes is very important, especially when we go to commercial buildings where the public is going to be in and enjoying whatever the commercial product is, or it's a restaurant or a bar or whatever, that they're safe up to the minute codes.
Now, another item that the board is really concerned with is hiring a new CAO.
Hiring a new CAO, yes. Yes, we have an interim one right now.
Right, he's good.
Manny's good. He was interim before we had hired Tim.
Right.
I really had thought Tim was going to last more than the year, little over a year that he lasted. I thought he would last for a while.
Do you think
for whatever reasons,
do you think he was abused a little bit?
I don't know. I don't really know the reasons why specifically. I mean, he gave reasons, but I can't tell you if those were absolutely all the reasons or whatever. It could have very well been like a lot of people that move here and find out it's too rural for them when they come from an area that has a mall down the street and it's populated, and they have friends that it didn't, and then they move back where they came from because it really wasn't, at the time it was nice, but it really was a lot of different lifestyle than what they were familiar with.
Plus he had an opportunity that probably doesn't come along very often.
Correct. He had an opportunity to go back where he from.
Yeah.
And so, but the new CAO coming forward, I believe the first week of March was a couple weeks away. I believe that we have interviews, the first round of interviews for CAOs coming up at that time.
Now, will you be testing them for knowledge of the Constitution?
Oh, absolutely, Al.
Oh, that's good.
Absolutely. I'll have
All right.
a copy of the Constitution and I'll be asking them questions about to see,
That's cool.
And they may claim the Fifth Amendment, though.
That's right. Well, they say know what amendment is. Okay, budget, midterm, coming up.
Midterm is coming up, too. That's going to be the first part of March also. So I look for the first couple of weeks of March to be very, very busy for the supervisors and the county. I'm very excited and looking forward to midterm. I would like to know exactly where we're at, how well we've done, where things are. It's an exciting time year here the last year or so. When I was on the board before, a few years back, it was the first year I got on the board was the first year of the big recession.
Right.
And the next 4 years, things steadily went down. So I was very excited the last year to at least see a budget that we weren't cutting, although we did cut 5%. I asked the board at one time during budget hearings to have the staff come back with a 5% reduction of what was presented to us. And my thoughts were, we don't know what's going to go on in the future. We don't know where things are going to be. So let's be conservative.
So you want to balance it?
Yeah.
Balance the budget.
And I got to point out, people say we had an unbalanced budget, but that's not exactly true. We use some one-time funding, but we use some, which is part of the budget, which is one-time funding, but it was for one-time uses. It wasn't for ongoing uses. So.
Gary, it's a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
How quickly the time flies.
Yes.
Thank you for watching our show. We'll see you next time.